So hello and a big warm welcome to you, Aletha. I'm so glad that you're here and I'm so glad that we're going to get to talk to each other. So I'd love to do a little brief intro about you and then we can launch into talking about what we're going to talk about today, which is really the origins of aware parenting, how you developed it, and a little bit about the history. So glad you're here.
Thank you.
So
Glad to be here.
Yay! So Aletha Salter, you have a PhD, you're a developmental psychologist, consultant, international speaker, and the author of 5 books. You can see mine are very well thumbed. So The Aware Baby, very well thumbed. Helping Young Children Flourish, Tears and Tantrums, Raising Drug-Free Kids, Attachment Play. Oh, and we've got an old version of Tears and Tantrums there. So, and your books have been translated into 13 languages. Is that still accurate?
Well, not all of them. Some of them.
Some of them.
One or more has been translated into, I forget, 12 or 13, something like that.
Yay.
Yeah.
And you founded the Aware Parenting Institute in 1990, and you have certified instructors in 20 countries, which is so amazing, isn't it? Congratulations. And for the people who don't know me, I'm Marion Rose, and I'm a level 2 aware parenting instructor. And I did want to say, just before I start, I'm so grateful to you, Aletha. Your work has been so profound for me and my family. I have 2 children, as you know, started aware parenting with them when they were very little, but also professionally, it's just such an honor for me and brought so much meaning and purpose to my life to share your work with others. So I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you for sharing that with me. It really touches me to hear you say that, and when other people say that too. And you've been, I should thank you too. You've been so active in promoting this approach in Australia. You're really doing a lot to support parents and really teach parents this approach. So thank you to you.
Oh, thank you so much. I love your work so much. So it's been so wonderful. I so enjoy it. So should we talk a little bit about aware parenting, the beginnings of aware parenting? So when you were a new mum and you wrote The Aware Baby in, let's go back there, in the early 80s, and it was published in 1984. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your experience that led to you writing that?
Yeah. So my first child was born in 1977. Okay. Before that, I had gotten involved in some therapy in my 20s, which really helped me. I had early childhood trauma, like many people. Mine was hospital trauma.
Yes.
It was separation trauma. I was isolated in a hospital at the age of 5, or it was either 1 week or 2 weeks, I'm not sure, but nobody was allowed to visit me. So it was a really big trauma. And I grew up with a fear of hospitals, fear of doctors. I panicked every time I had to go to a hospital. Luckily it wasn't too much, but
yes.
And so I was able to work through that as an adult, talking about it, crying about it. And I began to realize how helpful crying was. Yes. And so my goal, becoming a parent, when I became a new mother, I actually had 2 convictions. I didn't want to punish my children. I knew that, right?
Yes.
And I wanted my children to feel safe enough to express emotions, especially crying.
Yes.
Okay. Because I felt that, well, maybe children can heal while they're still young, maybe they don't have huge traumas with them throughout life. And I figured that must be possible.
Yes.
So I looked for books to help me. I found a really good book about non-punitive parenting. It was Thomas Gordon's book, Parent Effectiveness Training, the whole Gordon training movement, which was really popular then. And I even took a course in that, and that really helped me. But the crying part, the emotional part, I really didn't find any other books that really explained how to help a baby. And my son had birth trauma.
Yes.
How to help a baby with birth trauma. Okay, and he cried a lot. Okay, so I experimented, my poor child, I experimented with him, and I realized that he was, I actually cried I actually did what I now call the crying in arms approach. I just held him and let him cry, and I figured, I saw how relaxed he was afterwards, and he slept a little better. And
Can I pause you there? Because I'm really hearing, in terms of experimenting, that's your background, developmental psychology, and observing and experimenting, but through observation. So I'm really hearing you, you observed him and you noticed how he was, and yeah.
Right, and that's one thing I tell my parents: don't be afraid to experiment, because I did it and he's fine. I made lots of mistakes. I didn't have the aware baby.
I know, and you didn't have you.
I just had my baby and my own experience, and I started researching things. And so, but really the turning point came when, so he was 1 year old. I went to a breastfeeding support group for mothers of toddlers. I'd been going to breastfeeding support group at the beginning. It helped me get started with breastfeeding. I was still breastfeeding. He was 1 year old, 1.5. So I went for mothers of toddlers who were still breastfeeding. And this was a lot of my friends were breastfeeding.
Yes.
This was, we were actually doing, a lot of us in Santa Barbara, California, where I live, we're doing attachment parenting before the term had even been invented.
Yes. Yay.
Very, very, very progressive area where I live.
Yeah.
So I was getting breastfeeding support, and that was great. Well, this meeting of breastfeeding experts and moms, there was a woman, the leader, who had a 3-year-old child, and she told us how she was still nursing her child every 3 hours around the clock.
Yes.
During the night at age 3. And I thought, that doesn't sound like something I want to do when my child's 3 years old.
Yes.
It didn't sound right to me. That's the schedule of a newborn almost. It just didn't sit right with me, that idea. And that was kind of a turning point for me. And I felt, I'm doing something, I'm really different here, my approach.
Yes.
And I went to play groups and talked to other moms, and I realized I wanted my son to cry, and they did everything they could think of to stop their babies from crying. So, and then I eventually figured out how to help him sleep through the night, and that wasn't until he was almost 2 years old.
Yes.
But so that was when I really realized I'm doing something really different here.
Yes. Even though it was very progressive, and even you're still doing something different to that. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Right. So that's how I got started. And then, so I wrote The Aware Baby. And the book that I wish I had.
Yes, the book that you wish you had. I really do. Yes. Yeah.
And then I revised it in 2001.
Yes.
So
great. Thank you. And I hadn't heard that piece. I'm really hearing in what you're saying as well. There's so much about that listening to yourself and the kind of observing and experimenting. So really about the relationship, how you that really didn't sit for you, what you were seeing, and then exploring more to find out what did. And I really love that.
Yeah.
That's what I love about aware parenting, isn't it? It's so much about listening and observing and about the relationship, isn't it? Rather than it's really wonderful to have all the theory, but that each parent can go and do what you did, basically.
And really thinking about the advice you get. I mean, I was getting lots of good advice, but then some of the advice I got wasn't so good.
Yes.
People were telling me to let him cry it out, to leave him, the little crying approach, don't go to him. I even tried it, I'm really embarrassed to say, and I wrote about that in Beware Baby. It's no secret.
Yes, I know.
I was getting advice from all sorts of different directions, and I just had to figure it out for myself. So
yeah, such an important process, isn't it, for parents, that figuring out this doesn't fit for me and this does, and what happens if I do that.
Right.
Thank you, thank you. So when you wrote The Aware Baby and it was published, did you have any idea that it would take off to the extent that it has, and
No,
you would write more books, and that you would?
no, I had no idea. I thought I would write one book and then get on with my life, kind of thing. Okay, so I've written a book. I have this to offer. I was hoping it would sell.
Yes.
And then it's been very slow. The beginning was very slow. It didn't really take off right away at all.
Can you share a bit more about when it did, or what
it did. Yeah, well, okay, so people started asking me to write a sequel. And I thought, how can I write a sequel if they haven't started with this approach? What do you say to people who have 2 to 8 year old children, children aged 2 to 8?
Yes.
And I thought, well, maybe I could write a sequel. So I did. I wrote a sequel, Helping Young Children Flourish, and I've now recently just revised that. It's soon going to be a new revised edition going to be published very soon.
Yay, so exciting.
The title is going to be Cooperative and Connected.
Wow.
Helping children flourish without punishments or rewards. So that's the new edition of that second book. So that starting. I had connections in Europe because I lived in Europe. I used to live in Switzerland, and so I had connections in Europe. I did a first European workshop tour in 1991.
Okay.
Some of the connection. My books started getting translated.
Yes.
German, French, Dutch. Those were some of the first languages. And then people. Yeah, okay, so when people started asking me to do workshops,
yes,
my first reaction was, no, I don't do workshops. I write books. That's not my thing. I don't get up in front of a group of people. That's a whole different skill.
Yeah.
I don't have that skill. I really felt like that was not for me, but
wow,
people really wanted that. And I thought, well, okay, if it helps sell the books, I'll do it, But then I realized that I really got to liking doing workshops. After the first 10 years, I started to enjoy it. First 10 years, I was a bit terrified getting out in front of groups.
Yes, I hear you.
But I really do enjoy it now. And I realize that it's just reading a book is one way to convey information. There's lots of different ways.
Yes.
Oral, interacting with people in groups is a whole different way of communicating information. So I do that now. And then
I so remember going as well when you came to Australia, and when my daughter was 3, and I so remember your workshops, and I so loved them when you came again. I love your workshops. And
yeah, you invited me the first. That was That was fun. Yeah.
I've still got all my notes that I made.
So then people started asking me, well, they would say, I want to teach this.
Yes.
And I teach them, said, sure, go ahead. You can teach this. What? You don't need my permission.
Yes.
And then people would tell me, well, I need some kind of certificate,
Yes.
Can you develop some kind of training program or something? I said, oh, okay. Well, I suppose I could come up with some requirements. Mm-hmm. And so that's when the certification program began. And I started certifying people to become instructors.
Yes.
And then I developed the level 2 idea because people wanted to become instructors, and I couldn't go all these countries all the time. There's a limit to how much I can travel. So now people like you who are level 2 instructors, you can train people to become instructors. And then, of course, the internet, 1996, I got my website. I had one of the first parenting websites on the internet.
Did you? I didn't know that. I'm learning new things here. I'm loving this. So, yay.
96, pretty new. Yeah. A lot of companies, a lot of organizations didn't have websites yet in 1996.
Yes.
So that really helped. Yeah. That once I was on the internet, with that and with email and everything. So that.
Yay. Wow. Yeah. Love hearing that. I love hearing it.
And then I wrote Tears and Tantrums because that was the workshops that people wanted me to do. And so I thought, well, maybe I should just write a book just about that part, because that seemed to be the the most different from what was in other books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And attachment play. Then you wrote Raising Drug-Free Kids after that, didn't you?
Right.
It was last. Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you want to share a bit more about those last two?
Raising Drug-Free Kids, I just had this idea that to tie it in with substance abuse, which is becoming such a major worldwide problem, to tie it in and how this approach can help prevent substance abuse. So that's how I wrote that one.
Yes.
And then attachment play.
Yes.
That one, I'd always known the importance of play. I grew up in a family that played. My parents both loved games.
Oh, I love that.
And they played with us. And it was mostly board games, Scrabble and chess, but also what people used to call parlor games. When we would have company over, when we have other people with parlor games in the living room, just sitting around playing parlor games. And then games in the car while on car trips. My mother would always keep it occupied with games, with alphabet game or just, so they didn't use play in the way really I talk about it in a way I've written about an attachment play where, therapeutically or to elicit cooperation. But
yes, I
grew up with the notion that, that's what parents do. Parents play. And I thought all parents played with their children.
Yes.
And then I was surprised to find out that I would meet people who said, their parents never played with them.
Yeah.
Oh, isn't that what parents do? I just thought that
came
naturally to me when my children became naturally to play. And I love creating games. And I started finding ways to use play to help them cooperate. That was, one of my first clues that this is pretty powerful stuff, Yeah,
because it's so powerful, isn't it? And so you play with with them, and that's how you started to develop the different games and the different types of play. Because I've always wondered, I love attachment play and the way you develop different types of games for different types of challenges or different types of therapeutic issues. It's amazing.
Right. Yeah. I read. I was fascinated by play therapy. I've always been, and early on. I read the book by Virginia Axline called Play Therapy, and I really thought, wow, this is powerful stuff. So I was trying these things with my children and different kinds of therapeutic ways to use play, and then I decided to write a book on play early on, long before I did it.
Oh, really?
And the title I had selected that I thought would be good was Playful Parenting.
Yes.
And then
someone else.
Someone came out with his book in 2001, I think it was, with the title Playful Parenting.
Yes.
And here I already had notes and an outline, everything for a book called Playful Parenting. And well, he did it. So I can't do it now because he did it. He did that book I wanted to write. But then I realized that my book was, it was a whole different structure to my book and a different way of approaching. Yeah. I mean, I love his book. I love the book.
Yeah, me too.
I think it took me a while to realize that maybe I had something also to offer play.
Yes.
So I went ahead and did it and wrote it with a whole different structure than his book. Yeah. Categorizing different kinds of play and
which I love. It's so helpful, isn't it? I think for parents to know, this is the thing I'm finding challenging. It's issues on separation. What kinds of games could I play or could I try? And then often realizing that they're playing, that parents may be naturally playing things, and then they understand more. Oh, well, actually, this is a therapeutic way of working with this. It's so beautiful, isn't it?
Well, I wanted to add another reason I wrote attachment play is because people would talk about me as the crying guru, sort of, Lisa Soul, that's about crying. Lawrence Cohen, that's about play and laughter. But in both my first books, The Aware Baby and helping on children flourish, there's a lot about
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
And people weren't noticing it. They were just noticing the part about crying.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I really got to write a book.
Okay.
It's kind of crystal clear. This approach is more than just listening to your child's crying. It's a lot more. Yes. So that's one other reason I wrote that.
Oh, I love that. Yes. And I know you've often said that to me over the years when I write things, and you'll say, that remember, it's not just about the crying, because it's also, it's a form of attachment parenting. There's the whole cooperation, the discipline without punishments and rewards. So attachment play, that's so much more, isn't it, than just the crying.
Yeah, right. So.
Oh, well, I'm so enjoyed this. I've learned so many new things, which I already know lots, but I'm so enjoyed our conversation. Is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of this, this piece around
the origins, the origins of aware parenting? I never really thought I would be doing that. I thought I wanted to be a research psychologist. Okay.
Yeah.
And my original interest was how children learn, and I'm still fascinated by that. So, but I kind of fell into this in a way. It wasn't, so it's kind of interesting how my life has gone, and I'm totally happy with the direction I've taken. I think I really enjoy finding ways to communicate what I consider very important information.
Yes. Yeah.
And looking at the research and finding, what studies have been done and how that fits in with this whole approach that I've developed. I didn't really develop it. I just synthesized things that were there, information that was already there. I just synthesized it, put it together.
Yes. Yeah. In a new way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, what we all do, isn't it? Each we build on what's there and we bring it together. And Thank you so much. And so, your website, for those of you who are not watching or listening to this from your website's www.awareparenting.com. Do you want to share? And all your books are available there, and on Amazon. You do consultation.
Yeah. We're not going to be selling them much longer through the website, through directly. So they are available on Amazon, all the online booksellers now. So that's the place to get them.
Yay. Yeah, and the consultations, and you still travel around the world running workshops?
I do. Yep.
So people can find out all about that all on your website.
Yeah, it's all on my website.
Yes. Yay. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much. I've so enjoyed this. I so enjoyed talking to you, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Yeah, me too.
Yay. Thank you. I'm going to stop the record.